Sarah first noticed something was wrong when the humming stopped. The refrigerator, their ancient, reliable Kenmore that had outlasted 2 apartments and 1 failed engagement, had fallen silent for the first time in 7 years. "Marcus," she called from the kitchen. "I think the fridge finally died." Her husband appeared in the doorway, still in his work clothes, exhaustion etched into the lines around his eyes. "Can't be. I just bought groceries yesterday." "Listen." They stood together in the kitchen of their new home, a 1940s colonial they'd stretched their budget to afford, and listened to the absence of sound. No electrical hum, no compressor clicking, nothing. "Maybe it's the outlet," Marcus suggested, moving toward the appliance. "Help me pull it out." They gripped opposite sides and pulled. The fridge slid forward more easily than expected, as if it had been recently moved. Behind it, where there should have been a wall with a single electrical outlet, was a door. Sarah's breath caught. The door was narrow, painted the same faded yellow as the kitchen walls, with a tarnished brass knob that looked original to the house. It fit so perfectly into the space that it seemed impossible they hadn't noticed it during the home inspection. "That wasn't there before," Sarah said. "Of course it was. We just couldn't see it with the fridge in the way." Marcus reached for the knob. "Don't." "Why not?" "It probably leads to the basement. Maybe there's a fuse box or something." "We've been in the basement. The stairs are in the hallway." Marcus paused, his hand inches from the knob. "Maybe it's an old coal chute or storage behind the refrigerator." They stared at the door, in the evening light filtering through the kitchen window. The paint seemed to shift, showing patches of different colors: blue, green, white, as if it had been painted over many times. "I'm opening it," Marcus decided. The knob turned with a grinding sound. The door swung inward on silent hinges, revealing wooden steps that descended into darkness. The air that drifted up smelled of earth and something else, something sweet and cloying, like overripe fruit. Marcus found the flashlight they kept in the junk drawer and aimed it down the stairs. The beam revealed more steps than seemed possible, descending at a steep angle that shouldn't have fit within the house's foundation. "This doesn't make sense," Sarah whispered. "Old houses have weird layouts. Come on, we should call someone, the realtor maybe." "And say what?" "We found a room in our own house." Marcus started down the stairs. Sarah followed, her hand gripping the back of his shirt. The stairs creaked under their weight, and the walls rough stone instead of the finished drywall of their regular basement seemed to press in closer with each step. They reached the bottom after what felt like far too long. The flashlight beam swept across a small, empty room with a dirt floor and stone walls. In the center of the floor was a circle of darker earth, as if something had been buried and the soil recently disturbed. "See, just an old root cellar," Marcus said, but his voice carried forced casualness. "Root cellars don't have doors behind refrigerators." A sound from above made them both freeze. The unmistakable hum of the refrigerator starting up. "We should go," Sarah said. They climbed the stairs faster than they'd descended. But when they reached the top, they found themselves not in their kitchen, but in their bedroom. The door they emerged from was in the wall behind their dresser. The refrigerator's hum drifted up from the kitchen below. Sarah and Marcus looked at each other, then at the door, which now showed different paint, white with small flowers, like wallpaper painted over. The next morning, the door was in the hallway closet. Marcus found it while looking for his umbrella. This time, the paint was industrial green, like a hospital corridor. The knob was silver instead of brass. Sarah, she came from the kitchen, coffee mug in hand, and stopped when she saw his expression. "It moved," he said unnecessarily. They stood before the closet, coats and jackets pushed aside to reveal the door. The same size, the same style, but different details. Wrong details. "We're not opening it again," Sarah said. Agreed. They rehung the coats, closed the closet, and went to work. But all day, Sarah thought about the door. Where did those stairs lead when the entrance was in a different place? Was it the same room at the bottom, or somewhere else entirely? That evening, she arrived home first. The house felt different, charged with a waiting quality that made her skin prickle. She found the door in the pantry, painted black this time, with a crystal doorknob that caught the light like a prism. She was standing there, staring at it, when Marcus came home. "We need to talk about this," he said. "What's there to talk about? We have a door that moves around our house and leads to God knows where. Maybe the previous owners knew about it. Maybe that's why they sold." Sarah pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the realtor, but Helen Morse, their eternally cheerful agent, knew nothing about any unusual doors. The previous owners had lived there for 30 years without incident. No mentions in the disclosure. No notes in the inspection. They tried to ignore it. For 3 days, they lived around the door. When it appeared in the bathroom behind the towel rack, they used the downstairs powder room. When it materialized in the garage, between Marcus's tool bench and the lawn mower, they parked on the street. On the 4th night, Sarah woke to find Marcus's side of the bed empty. She called his name, but the house swallowed the sound. She found him in the kitchen, standing before the refrigerator. It had been pulled away from the wall again, and the door was back in its original spot, faded yellow paint, tarnished brass knob. Marcus stood with his hand on the knob, his eyes vacant and glassy. "Marcus," Sarah touched his shoulder and he jerked, blinking rapidly. "I was sleepwalking," he said, but his hand remained on the knob. "Come back to bed." "In a minute." Marcus let go of the door. He looked at his hand, as if surprised to find it there. "I can hear something down there. Listen." Sarah listened. Beyond the house's normal settling sounds, she heard it too, a rhythmic creaking, like footsteps on old wood. "Someone's down there," Marcus whispered. "No, we're going back to bed." What if it's the previous owners? What if they're trapped? That's insane. Is it? Is it any more insane than a door that moves? The footsteps continued, steady and patient. They seemed to be climbing, getting closer. "We need to know," Marcus said, and turned the knob. This time, the stairs were different. Instead of rough stone walls, they were lined with the same floral wallpaper as their bedroom. Family photos hung at irregular intervals, but not their photos. The faces in the frames were strangers, yet they stood in rooms Sarah recognized. Their kitchen, their living room, their bedroom. In one photo, a woman stood before the refrigerator, her hand reaching behind it. The footsteps had stopped. Marcus descended despite Sarah's protests. She followed because the alternative was standing alone in the kitchen with the door open behind her. The stairs spiraled now, an architectural impossibility that made her dizzy. The photos continued, showing the same strangers in different decades. 1970s colors gave way to 1980s pastels, then 1990s beiges. But always the same poses, the same rooms, the same reaching toward something behind furniture. They reached a landing. Another door stood before them, identical to the one they'd entered, but facing the wrong direction. Through its frosted glass panel, a shadow moved. "We need to leave," Sarah said. "Now," but when they turned, the stairs behind them were gone. Just a stone wall, cold and damp to the touch. The shadow behind the frosted glass grew larger. The doorknob began to turn. Marcus grabbed Sarah's hand and pulled her to the side, pressing against the wall as the door opened. What emerged wasn't human, though it wore human clothes. A polyester dress from the 1960s over a form that bent in too many places. It passed without seeing them, humming tunelessly, and began to climb stairs that hadn't been there a moment before. Sarah and Marcus waited until the sound faded, then slipped through the doorway it had vacated. They found themselves in their own basement, the normal one, with the washer and dryer and boxes of Christmas decorations. The door they'd come through was set into the wall near the water heater. As they watched, it began to fade, the edges becoming indistinct. "Run," Sarah said. They ran up the familiar stairs, through the hallway, into the kitchen where the refrigerator hummed normally against the wall. Without discussion, they began to pack. 6 months later, in their new apartment across town, Sarah saw the listing pop up again. Charming colonial, needs work, motivated sellers. The photos showed her kitchen, her living room, but with different furniture. In one image, she could just make out the edge of the refrigerator, pulled slightly away from the wall. She closed the laptop and tried not to think about who might be climbing those impossible stairs, or what they might find at the bottom. But sometimes, late at night, she still heard it, the patient creak of footsteps, the hum of a refrigerator in a room where no refrigerator should be, and somewhere, the soft click of a brass knob beginning to turn. The apartment they rented was modern open plan, with no hidden spaces or mysterious doors. But Sarah had started to notice that the refrigerator, a sleek stainless steel model that came with the unit, sometimes hummed in a rhythm that sounded almost like breathing. And last week, When she'd pulled it out to clean behind it, she'd found scratches on the wall, deep gouges in the drywall that formed the outline of a door. Marcus pretended not to see them. They pushed the refrigerator back and didn't speak of it. But Sarah knew the truth now. It wasn't the house that was wrong. It was them. They'd been marked somehow, chosen by whatever existed behind those doors, in those impossible spaces between walls. And no matter where they moved, no matter how many times they ran, eventually they would wake to find a door behind some piece of furniture, waiting patiently for them to open it again. The scratches on the wall grew deeper each day. The humming grew louder each night. And somewhere, in a space that touched all spaces, something continued to climb stairs that led everywhere and nowhere, looking for the ones who'd found its door, looking for the ones who'd let it taste the possibility of escape. Sarah and Marcus held each other in the dark and tried not to listen to the sounds behind the walls. They'd learned the true horror wasn't the door itself. It was knowing that one night, no matter how hard they fought it, they would open it again. Because the door didn't just move through space. It moved through them, and it was hungry.